everyone, and welcome to another episode of Thunderstruck, our look back at the career of one Jushin Thunder Liger, as told by his greatest matches, or most memorable matches in some cases, as picked by each and every unique standalone guest of this podcast series. My name is W.H. Park. I, of course, am the co-host of the Post Perez podcast here at postwrestling.com, along with John Pollock. Joining me today is a special guest, a person I've talked to a couple of times already now, both on the Cruel Summer series, as well as doing a review of a New Japan show emanating from California. He is professional wrestler from Australia, Davis Storm. Davis, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Very nice to join you here again on the Post Wrestling platform. Really looking forward to chatting about this match of Jushin Thunder Liger.
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about, Liger and, your fandom of Liger a bit. But just for those listeners who might not have maybe heard us talk on the, the California show that we did from Post Wrestling a while ago. But what does Jushin Liger mean to you? I know there was, a point where, you're trying to get a match with him that didn't go anywhere, unfortunately. But, it would have meant something. It would have been a kind of a momentous occasion in your career if you were able to have some kind of interaction with Liger before he retired.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we, as wrestlers, we all have guys who we want to work with, who we have a fair amount of respect for. And then there are, I think this would be the equivalent of, I've heard Edge talk about how working with Hogan was such a big thrill for him because Hogan was such a huge influence on his career and a guy he looked up to when he was a kid. And I guess that's how I feel about Liger, that my first exposure to Liger was through the PWI Aptamags, and how he just had this character that leapt off the page at, I suppose I would have been about 12 years old at the time when I first saw him. And to hear through the magazines, not actually be able to get any footage at the time, but to hear of this guy who did backflips through the air and work this style that, I'd never witnessed before in a WWF ring at the time. It made me look at this guy, and he really is. He's a superhero. And I think the wrestlers that have the influence on us in our younger years are the ones that we look at them in a completely different way. I think once we grow up and we look at wrestling in a different way and we start to appreciate things like work rate and the subtleties of character work, that we look at wrestling in a completely different way. And while I can absolutely appreciate Liger on that level as well, because he's a real game changer in the game of professional wrestling, I think he's still just that boyhood hero to me who I looked up to. He's the Ninja Turtles. He's the X-Men. He's all of those things combined with a professional wrestler for me. And I've just been a huge fan of him for the last 25, 30 years.
From a purely, professional wrestling point of view, from a purely in-ring point of view, how do you feel about his contribution to the way wrestling is presented, especially for junior heavyweights?
I think he's been revolutionary, and I don't think that's a controversial take at all. I think most people look at him as the guy who revolutionized and brought together a bunch of styles as well. And I'd say, there are some other names who would have traveled in the same period of time who I'm sure are responsible for that as well, for this melding of styles. But Owen Hart would probably be one who you'd throw into that equation as well. But guys who traveled the world and picked up a British style of wrestling is a very distinct style. Lucha Libre is a very distinct style, and pro wrestler is a very distinct style as well. And there were a few guys who were able to fuse these styles together, and that became, I suppose, what we would think of as the indie style that really led to the first indie boom, probably in the late 90s and early 2000s. And he was responsible for that style. And I think it's quite possible to say that the current landscape of wrestling wouldn't look like it does without the influence of Jushin Liger. And that's not something that at the end of the day, a lot of wrestlers are going to be able to say at the end of their career, that the way they wrestled was not just something that was admired, but that he's changed the way that people wrestle over the last 25 years. And his ability to adapt to his circumstances, and he's so well versed in so many different areas of wrestling that how many people can have a brain tumor removed and return to the ring and not look like they've lost a step. He was completely able to adapt his style in a completely different way, and he became a different Liger while still having enough of the old tropes and being able to keep enough of what it was that we already loved about him together. He's just a phenomenon.
How would you say he's influenced your own personal style of wrestling?
So Liger was the one that opened me to the world of Japanese wrestling. And I know we've talked previously that for me, the two styles of wrestling that influenced me the most, and that's, of course, not taking into consideration that it was the late 80s WWF that sort of got me watching in the first place, but Liger was what drew me to seek out Japanese wrestling in the first place. And the two styles that have probably influenced me the most in terms of what I wanted to do was the mid to late 90s New Japan Junior style and the heavyweights of All Japan, probably through the same period. So without having been subjected to Liger in these magazines, without picking up this influence of wanting to seek more of what this guy was about and see more of what he was about, and then through him being exposed to so many other amazing wrestlers, he's had an incredible influence on my career without ever having spoken to the man or have met him. I've been fortunate enough to see him wrestle live twice. Once in Australia and once in Brooklyn, and both times total fluke opportunities. It's strange to think that Jushin Liger versus Chris Benoit happened in my hometown of Perth, which is the most isolated capital city in the world. And I just heard about it at the very last minute. This would have been in, I think, maybe 91 or 1992, and then, just by some freak chance, a friend who was traveling with my brother and a good friend of mine had to come home before the NXT Brooklyn show that Liger appeared on against, who did he wrestle then?
Tyler Breeze.
Tyler Breeze, that's right. And I just caught a last-minute flight to New York to catch him live there, which, again, was just a pure chance that I've been able to catch him live twice, but very appreciative of those opportunities. But yeah, this is not a man that I've ever met, that I've ever trained under, and yet his style and the way he's trained and the way that he's influenced me greatly without ever having spoken a word to me or stepped foot in the ring with me.
Yeah, I would think that anyone who has a chance to see Liger live, please take it. I mean, you went to the extremes. You caught a flight from Australia all the way to Brooklyn, New York. That's pretty impressive. So let's talk about the match that you picked. Davis, tell us about what we're going to talk about today.
So we're going to talk about a match that took place in 1997, February of 97, between Koji Kanemoto and Jushin Thunder Liger, who I think a lot of people would be able to say this, that I think Kanemoto was probably Liger is maybe the main rival in the New Japan story of Koji Kanemoto, but that you might not be able to say the same for Liger. Liger has so many great rivals that it's probably hard to single it down to one, but Liger was just a constant thorn in the side of Kanemoto through his entire New Japan career. And I didn't know exactly which match I was going to single it down to because I just love watching these two guys wrestle, but availability definitely played a part in it when I went looking for matches between Liger and Kanemoto, and this was the first one that I was able to come across.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good choice. February 16th, 1997, Fighting Spirit 1997 show from Sumo Hall in Ryogoku in Tokyo. It is for the J-Crown title, Davis, the massive 8-belt, title championship that Liger had won from. I forget who he won it from. Was it Ultimo Dragon? I think it was from Ultimo Dragon.
I think so. I couldn't say with any certainty, but I think Dragon and Liger are the two that. Oh, and Sasuke, I suppose, are the ones that we associate most closely with it.
Yeah, so like you're saying about like the relationship between Jushin Liger and Koji Kanemoto, they are definitely like people that are synonymous with each other's rivals in the 1990s especially. But, like of the pantheon of Jushin Liger rivals, I'd have to put up there is of course Naoki Sano. I would think his first major program and feud was with him after he became Liger. Definitely Koji Kanemoto, definitely, Wild Pegasus Chris Benoit. You'd have to throw in Shinjiro Otani, one of Kanemoto's regular tag partners, in that mix as well. And even in as far as the American wrestler goes, Brian Pillman, that's kind of what introduced Liger to the American audience, was the program he had with Pillman in WCW over the WCW light heavyweight title. But, for when I got introduced to Japanese wrestling, where I was getting tapes and then later DVDs of shows, it's who's this guy, Kanemoto? He's awesome. Cause does this kind of style where he's a high flyer to some degree, but he does a very, very shooty kind of a style. A lot of kicks, a lot of stiff kicks, and a lot of dickish behavior, which matches the kind of behavior of his tag team partner that I mentioned, Shinjiro Otani.
Yeah, they seem to have this. It was actually something I was going to bring up also, that their entire careers, they just seem to have a chip on their shoulder, and that led to a very natural rivalry with Liger. That these were at the time young guys breaking in, but they never. There was nothing about Otani or Kanemoto that said that they were going to take a backward step in any situation. They were extremely confrontational. They were constantly in your face, constantly disrespectful. And while you got the sense that there was a sense of honor to them, still they were just brutal and relentless and disrespectful all the time. They never ever turned it off. And I mean that led to a moment between Liger and Kanemoto when Kanemoto was unmasked as Tiger Mask 3, and he, there was no shame and there was no taking a backward step in that moment. He threw the mask at Liger, and I think if anything that just led to the animosity between them intensifying over the years.
Oh yeah, so let's get into the match here. So Liger, as we said, is the reigning and defending J Crown champion. We opened the video with the swimsuit models, the J Crown swimsuit models, holding up all the belts behind Liger. So the whole gimmick with this is that it's eight titles, it's 8 championship belts. So the champion's not going to come out holding all 8 titles. So what they did was that usually Liger would wear the IWGP title belt, and then he'd have I think about 3 or 4 models, swimsuit models, walking behind him holding all the other belts, and then they come into the ring, they'd stand behind the champion, and then in this case, we have the title match proclamation being done by New Japan legend Seiji Sakaguchi, and as he's introducing Liger, he wants to collect all the title belts and show them to Kanemoto, and then present them to the fans, and then have the match. So Liger grabs a belt from one of the models, gives it to Sakaguchi, grabs another belt, gives it to Sakaguchi. This takes up about a good 5 minutes of the time of this match here, Davis.
Yeah, it's great to see this. There's so much. What's the word I'm looking for? It's such a huge presentation, and I think that helps add to the prestige of the match. That they are such great career rivals, but also that there are these 8 title belts on the line, and to not disrespect any of those titles, to take all of them and sort of put them on a level pegging by handing them over individually, and not just only respecting the IWGP Junior title and then just throwing the rest to the side. He has a great deal of respect for all of the title belts.
Oh, definitely. I think maybe the word we're thinking of is pageantry.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely some swimsuit pageantry on display in this match in the title ceremony. So we get a good shot of Kanemoto's corner, and we see in his corner is Shinjiro Otani and Chris Jericho. I think at this point, like in Jericho's career, he was aligned with Kanemoto and Otani, and I believe Tatsuhiro Takaiwa as well, against people like Liger. And in his corner, we see El Samurai. So El Samurai, I would assume, like while Pegasus is maybe on the side of Liger, and if Eddie Guerrero as Black Tiger 2 is around, that he would be on that side. I'm not sure if this is the period where like Benoit, Liger, Eddie, and El Samurai had formed the Junior Horsemen, and they were like feuding with like Otani and Kanemoto and all of their allies.
Sure. Timelines very much confuse me in terms of the comings and goings of Guerrero and Benoit in Japan. So yeah, like yourself, I'm not too certain, but it was definitely noticeable that Kanemoto had the three in his corner and just El Samurai in Liger's corner all by himself.
Yeah, both men get big cheers from the crowd as their names are announced. Things are intense right away at the start of this match with a strong collar and elbow lockup, followed by a heated strike exchange between these two. These guys aren't messing around. They're getting right into it, Davis.
Yeah, there's like I said before, there's no backward steps with Kanemoto, so They immediately push to the ropes. Actually, one thing I loved at the very beginning was just as soon as the bell rings, Kanemoto rushes to seize the middle of the ring. And to me, this speaks volumes of he's saying to Liger, not only will I not take a backward step, but this is my ring. I'm taking the center of the ring. He rushed out very much. I just have been watching with UFC 245 coming up. I just watched the Colby Covington Rafael dos Anjos fight, and the way Colby comes out as well, same thing. He shoots right to the middle of the cage, and it just, to me, it asserts a sense of dominance right from the beginning that Kanemoto just comes charging out of the blocks, and he concedes the middle. But to me, it's just a little bit of a statement that this is my ring, and if you wanna beat me, you're gonna have to come and meet me in the center of the ring.
Well, like Kanemoto does like kind of take charge of the match. He starts going after Liger's left leg with these vicious kicks, and then he transitions into this kind of a standing ankle lock. So not only taking ownership of the middle of the ring, of the match itself, but of Liger's left leg here, Davis, with these vicious kicks.
There's no thigh slapping here. But every single one of these kicks just rings out when it makes contact with Liger. Kanemoto just holds nothing back. And if I can just give a big name drop here, I remember talking to my buddy Fergal Devitt many years ago when he first started in New Japan, and I asked him about Kanemoto because I admired him so much, and I asked him to explain what wrestling Kanemoto was like, and he said, "You feel like you're a man with the apple on your head." he said, "You feel the entire time like you are just seconds away from disaster, that his kicks are so expertly placed and so strong and so fierce that you could be just a hair away from disaster, but just he's that good that just you're able to walk away with your life every single time."
Well, that's an awesome insight. That's why we have you on here, Davis, for these insights from like your connections to people who've wrestled other people in New Japan Pro Wrestling. From here, I gotta say, Kanemoto looks like he's bored doing limb work already in this match, and he just decides to kick the shit out of Liger's back instead. Legs. I'm bored. I'm gonna kick his back instead. He just goes to town on his back instead.
He's so dominant throughout this. I mean, the first almost 10 minutes of the match is just Kanemoto on pure offense, and he's either working that leg of Liger or he's just flailing away at him, just kicking at him any way that he can. And there almost seems like this dangerous recklessness to the way that Kanemoto strikes, that there seems to be very little care in the way that he strikes. He just, whatever you present to him, he just uses that as an opportunity to kick. And early Liger seems to try and engage him in the ground game after a while, kind of realizing that he's not going to be able to get away from Kanemoto that easily. He tries to engage in the ground game, but Kanemoto's just all over him.
Yeah, Kanemoto does transition back to working on the left leg with kicks there again, and then he applies a leg lock, peppered with some slaps to the face of Liger. Like, this is where we the kind of the dickish behavior comes out in Kanemoto when he gets a chance to humiliate his opponent, because I'm sure the slaps hurt, but I'm sure they hurt Liger's pride more than they do physically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful moment too, where they both sit up, and Liger is defiantly sitting up in the figure four, trying to fight back. And like you said, Kanemoto's just slapping away at him, kind of saying, I don't give a shit whether or not I'm hurting you here. I'm controlling you, and you can brave through this, and you can puff your chest out to me, and I'm just going to slap you in the face.
I gotta say, I think Kanemoto was one of the best kickers in wrestling at this point in history. Like, he's up there for me, like with Toshiaki Kawada.
Yeah, I agree. His striking game's incredible, and I actually remember the first time that I saw Kota Ibushi in a New Japan ring, and he the finish of the match he had with Kanemoto, he goes for a shooting star press, misses, sits up, and Kanemoto just, I have no idea how he didn't just ruin Ibushi's perfect face, but this is just the stiffest kick to the nose I've ever seen in my life. Just straight up the middle, knockout kick, 1, 2, 3. And you're right, his striking game is just on point. There you can't see through anything that he does. He's just right there on the money.
From this point, you kind of think that Kanemoto's strategy seems to be going after different parts of Liger's body and just see what sticks. Like, there's not a focused attack on any one part, really. Like, we talk about the left leg, but like I said, he goes after the back. He starts slapping Liger's face and just goes back to the leg again. I think this is kind of him just throwing everything against the wall, even though they're doing a worked match, and I'm sure they might have some idea of what they want to do in the match. Like, it does seem like Kanemoto's kind of in charge of the match and kind of calling all the spots, and Liger's kind of working with him to get him over. I think the point of the match more is to get Kanemoto over as a strong opponent to Liger, in this match itself, but for the future as well.
Yeah, I think in their rivalry, like I said, I think Kanemoto had a reputation of always coming up short in the big moment. So I think the way that he wrestles in this match, part of it is that he's showing this dominance towards Liger, partially, I suppose, to show his growth as a wrestler, and that he's not, even though he has lost so many big matches against Liger, that he's not overawed by the occasion, and that he's going to rise to the occasion. So yeah, it's interesting watching the way that he does go about it, where he just really seems to be more interested in beating him up. I think it's almost he's on top for maybe the first 10 minutes of the match, bar one powerbomb from Liger that he completely no-sells, stands back up, and just starts kicking the hell out of him again. And I don't think he even goes for a pinfall in that entire period. I think there's one where he just casually leans on Liger's chest, just puts his knee across his chest, and Liger just pushes him away. But it seems to be more about asserting his dominance and more about showing Liger that he's tougher and faster and harder than Liger is at this point. And although he hasn't won these big matches in the past, that with the J crown on the line, he's finally going to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, so Kanemoto applies a figure four leg lock, and in the figure four leg lock, he decides to flip the bird to Liger, gives him the big middle finger. Have you ever done this? Had someone in the movie and just given them a figure?
Yeah, of course. Has
it ever been done to you? Has Damian Slater ever done that to you?
Not Damian Slater, but an excellent technical wrestler from Perth by the name of Gavin McGavin has certainly put me in that situation. And I think I might have reached up and tried to slap him in the face in that moment too.
I can't really blame you. Such a sign of disrespect. Liger tries to reach the ropes, but Kanemoto butt drags both closer to the center of the ring. Kanemoto throws some hard slaps to Liger's face in there for good measure. Just nice, just really great dickish behavior. I'm just absolutely loving this kind of control sequence from Kanemoto. Liger gets to the ropes to finally force a break, and Kanemoto resumes kicking and slapping Liger again. He's such a great dickhead wrestler. To me, like, the greatest dickhead wrestlers are like him, Otani, Jun Akiyama, Shima, or Suwa from Crazy Max. One of Shima's Kenta is you gotta put Kenta in there as well. I love dickhead wrestlers. People who are just disrespectful and just want to beat you up and just kind of just disrespect you at the same time in the ring.
Yeah, it's such easy hate because I think it's a visceral reaction that we have to it when we watch it. And I know you've recently had that with El Fantasmo, that you feel that he's such a dickhead in those moments, and that he's so disrespectful, and that the way he goes about it is they draw such a visceral reaction from you that everybody's had someone in their life who's treated them like that, who's been disrespectful towards them, or maybe you feel disrespected in your workplace or whatever. I think it's one of the main reasons that Austin 316 got over so huge with was this. Here's a guy who went to work and beat up his boss. That everyone feels disrespected on some level, and I think guys like Kanemoto and Otani, they're able to tap into that really primal feeling of being backed into the corner and feeling bullied and pushed around, that you need to feel the babyface fight back for you, because you feel that disrespect, and it makes you want to see someone rise to the occasion.
From here, Kanemoto traps Liger in the corner. He mounts the second rope and then proceeds to rain down these blows on top of Liger's head. Liger is able to hit Kanemoto with the desperation powerbomb that you mentioned earlier. But like you said, Kanemoto recovers very quickly and just resumes his assault on the champion here, eventually driving him under the bottom rope to the floor. Liger quickly gets back in, where Kanemoto ties Liger into the Tree of Woe. And I made a note here that I believe we can hear the smoke-damaged voice of El Samurai, which prompts Kanemoto to come over to where he is and kick at him as well, like just kick the ropes where he has to like kind of drive him away. Because like, not only did Kanemoto have a fierce rivalry with Liger, but I think actually maybe he might have had an even like more intense rivalry and some incredible matches with El Samurai.
Yeah, look, if I can, I would have loved to have reviewed this match, actually. I think it's the 97 Best of the Super Junior final between Kanemoto and El Samurai, which is just one of the most incredibly heated matches I've ever seen. And Kanemoto really does play that dickhead heel to perfection in that match. Amazing match, and people should chase that one down if they haven't seen it.
And people should also try to find videos of El Samurai cutting promos, and just to hear how gravelly this man's voice is. It's like I do believe it's been said that he smokes about like 5 packs of cigarettes a day.
That's incredible that he can still go.
A lot of people in wrestling are heavy smokers. Like Shinsuke Nakamura apparently is a very, very heavy smoker, but he's got amazing conditioning. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
It is. And I think the true greats can still go to the ring and perform no matter what physical state they're in. I know for me, I've really felt it sometimes, and I just can't get up for the occasion. And then when you hear that there are these guys who, and I witnessed it firsthand with a touring wrestler in Perth maybe over a decade ago, where before the match, he seemed like he's struggling a bit with his breathing. I think he might have been a smoker also. Went to the ring and just performed amazingly. Just didn't slow down. Just beat our guy to the punch at every turn, who was probably a good decade younger than he was. And then as soon as he came back through the curtain, was coughing and spluttering again, but was just a complete pro in the ring. There are just the best professionals, I think, can just go to the ring and perform under any circumstance, which is just amazing to me.
From here, Kanemoto hits a dropkick to Liger's breadbasket, which must have sucked. Kanemoto's nearly 11-minute mugging of Liger leads to him planting Liger onto the mat, and then he goes to the top rope for a moonsault. Fortunately for Liger, he rolls out of the way. Kanemoto lands on his feet, but Liger is able to hit him with this beautiful looking shote. So finally, Liger's able to kind of like get the upper hand on Kanemoto with this kind of one mistake that he makes in this match, which is Kanemoto going for one of his finishing moves at pretty much at around the 12-minute mark, Davis.
Yeah, look, to me, this moment is just a testament to how good these two are, because if you told me, particularly in this modern age, that someone was going to run an 11-minute heat to start their match and that anybody was going to give a shit at that point, I would definitely be surprised. But Kanemoto is just so good at what he does that I think a lot of people have forgotten, a lot of wrestlers in particular have forgotten what the word heat means. Heat is not the part of the match where the bad guy gets his shit in. It's the point of the match where you draw heat. And that doesn't necessarily need to be through your actions, although in Kanemoto's it is, where he's just laying an absolute beating on Liger. But it's also in the way he carries himself. It's also in the way that he disrespects Liger. And all these things add up to us wanting to see Liger, who is an amazing babyface. We want to see him come back. We want to see him fight back, and we want to see him overcome the odds. And I think that the fact that they're able to get through such a long period of heat at the beginning of this match, and the crowd just explodes after that. Kanemoto misses a beautiful moonsault, and then Liger just nails him with the shote, and the crowd just comes alive at this point, and so does Liger.
Yeah, so like you're saying, the crowd just goes nuts because they are ready. They are ready for Liger to beat the shit out of Kanemoto. Liger hits these big palm slaps to Kanemoto's face, each one expressing a big fuck you to Kanemoto. One fuck you, a second fuck you, a third fuck you, and finally a fourth fuck you in these palm slaps. And he's just like, trying to like perform plastic surgery without a scalpel on Kanemoto's face here, Davis. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, how these guys walk away with their jaws intact is just amazing. He's absolutely nailing him here, and he really needed to. As a babyface, we're willing to ride through 11 minutes of you getting your ass kicked, but when it's your turn to kick ass, we want to see you come forward and we want to see you hit hard, and Liger certainly doesn't let the crowd down.
Liger hits Kanemoto with a drop kick to his knee and then goes for a figure four leg lock of his own. We see Otani outside encouraging Kanemoto to reach the ropes. And then when Kanemoto does, Otani immediately gets on the ref to break the hold. I have to say, Shinjiro Otani, whether he's in the ring wrestling or he's outside seconding, is fucking amazing. I love this man.
He's so switched on and he's so invested, and that just adds more drama to the match, because you could very easily, and you see it all the time, that there are tag team partners who are just sitting on the apron bored while their partner gets his ass kicked. And here is Otani sitting on the outside, a match that he's not even a part of. He's not teaming with Kanemoto here. He's just there as his second. But he's so invested in what's going on in the ring, and he's living or dying by whether Kanemoto can overcome Liger. And like you said, right on top of the referee, making sure that he breaks the hold and doesn't get away with anything.
Yeah. It's great. Liger immediately gets up and plants his feet into Kanemoto's stomach. Another fuck you to him. He then tries to murder Kanemoto with a powerbomb. Another fuck you. And that sees Kanemoto's head bounce off the mat. Ouch. That looked like it really sucked. Have you ever been powerbombed and your head bounced off the mat, Davis?
Yes, I remember very vividly wrestling the Smashing Machine Chris Weiss, who wrestles over in Japan now for 0-1. Part of the Voodoo Murderers, and he powerbombed me, and I stood up afterwards to try and move towards him, and I just remember my legs buckling under me afterwards. An incredibly strong man, but that powerbomb from Liger, very Benoit-esque for mine.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Benoit would, routinely powerbomb Eddie Guerrero on TV, and I was just like, I think they're supposed to be friends, these two. But anyways, Liger tries to suplex Kanemoto to the outside, but Kanemoto blocks it with a couple of hard slaps and a spinning heel kick that launches Liger to the barrier. So Liger's actually on the apron. He's outside of the ring. Liger reverses an Irish whip and sends Kanemoto into the barrier, and he follows up with a beautiful capo kick, one of his signature moves. And I gotta say, I don't know what it is about when Liger just, peppers his matches with signature moves like the tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, the Romero special, the shotes. But I'm a big fan of the capo kick. For some reason, whenever I see him do it, it just makes me feel so happy.
Absolutely. It's been a trademark of his for years and years. And yeah, there's something it's graceful, but it's still very aggressive that I think we've seen a lot of people do it very badly, but there have been very few that have imitated it well. I think Low Ki maybe being one of those as someone who's been able to imitate it well. But yeah, a real staple of Liger's offense over the years.
Liger then hits a brainbuster that, Davis, I swear to God, I think Kanemoto's head hit the concrete instead of the blue padding. Holy fuck.
I cringed so hard. I had no idea how he was going to get up from this, because it would have been bad enough on those thin blue mats on the outside. This is not modern pro wrestling mats on the outside, WWE mats on the outside. These are barely there, thin blue mats, and I thought that would be bad enough, and then they completely seem to miss the mats, and Kanemoto's head just seems to crash into the concrete, and I thought he was dead. And I know I did hear you talking about the trope of the 19 count in the current Gato booking, but I thought that this, if any move deserved a 19 count, this was certainly it.
Oh, definitely. Like as you're saying, like Kanemoto is able to get back into the ring by the 19 count. Of course, if this was modern New Japan, this would have been like, the third or fourth, 19 count spot you would have seen throughout the show. But I'm sure this was the only time it was done on this particular show, so it meant a lot more. But obviously, yeah, it works because you think Kanemoto's brain has been split open by this brain buster, literally a brain buster. If his head did indeed make contact with the concrete instead of the blue mats. Liger charges at Kanemoto, but Kanemoto catches Liger with a beautiful belly-to-belly overhead suplex that just sends Liger flying and just stuns him. It's one of Kanemoto's signature moves that I love seeing.
Same. It's to me, it's the best belly-to-belly I've seen. He gets such great purchase on it, but he's still. I know people have criticized The Rock over the years that his just kind of looked like a nipple rub as they floated over his head. Kanemoto's is just a thing of beauty. He gets a great hold of them, great height with the hips, and really gives Liger a throw here.
Kanemoto follows up with more kicks and hits his second rope twisting senton onto Liger. A couple of punches to Liger in the corner. Kanemoto steps out to the middle and charges back in, but Liger hits him with a vicious clothesline. This was great. Liger then hits an avalanche fisherman buster. Oh my God. For the 1-2. Oh my God, he kicks out, Davis.
Yeah, this felt like it was going to be the finish. It was such a huge moment. They had such great momentum, a beautiful build from the time Liger started his comeback. We're just escalating, and this felt like the moment that, and the crowd really bought on it too. That this huge avalanche fisherman buster, and I can't explain exactly what it is, but there's just something about the way Kanemoto bounced off the ring. This seemed particularly painful, particularly stiff. But yeah, amazing reaction.
We're not done. So they get back to the top, and Liger hits a Frankensteiner on Kanemoto. Then he hits a release German suplex that sends Kanemoto feet over ass. Like literally, this man folded over from the sheer power and velocity of this German suplex that Liger hit him. Like, fuck Brock Lesnar. Liger was Suplex City before Brock Lesnar came along. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think this was something that we saw much in this age either. Very innovative, and yeah, it looked painful.
Yeah, from here, just the escalation of this match, Liger goes for a brainbuster, but thankfully Kanemoto is able to block it. Liger then transitions to the La Magistral Cradle for a 1-2. Kicks, and then Kanemoto escapes. So now Liger's just busting everything out, because this is one of his finishers, actually. People might not realize this, but the La Magistral Cradle, like a move that was kind of popularized in Japan by Ultimo Dragon, was something that Liger adopted for himself to great success. But Kanemoto is not giving up like, I'm not going to say he's not giving up easily, because, like, my God, he's taking a hell of beating after, like, the 12-minute assault he had on Liger earlier in the match. He is now, like, you know, like, he's giving his body to Liger to just, like, get punished.
Yeah, absolutely. He's getting all of his comeuppance, and I think the way that they've structured it's so clever, and the way that they've wrestled that, you know, Kanemoto is constantly laying into Liger with the strikes, and he's very strike heavy. And then when Liger comes back, it's with these big moves. There are still moments of great contact through the strikes, like the clothesline that you referred to, and the shotes are very physical, but it's to me, it's more Liger is looking for these home run shots, the avalanche fisherman, although obviously it's not a power move, but the going to the Mahastral, which really stood out to me as well, that, you know, it was a fairly well protected finish, that it got a great reaction in this moment. And then Kanemoto able to survive through all of these big moments, that you felt like if he could just get a small run on, that the match was his for the taking, which is exactly what happens in this next stretch as Kanemoto hits a Liger bomb of his own, then a release Tiger suplex, and then follows that up with a beautiful moonsault. And, you know, to me, the moonsault has been way overdone over the years. Koji Kanemoto has one of the most graceful moonsaults of all time, and he gets high. There's a beautiful arc on it, and he actually lands with some contact. He's not just brushing over the guy as he passes. There's actual contact in the moonsault, and that just made for an incredible near fall, where I think everyone thought he had survived through all these huge moments from Liger, and this was his match for the taking now.
Oh, yeah, so from this, you know, like the spot that you just called, the release Tiger suplex, and then he goes for a moonsault, there's a big, you know, like it's a 2 count, 1, 2, and at the same time, you can see the camera's positioned, so you can see Shinjiro Otani counting along with the ref, and then this huge look of disappointment when Liger kicks out. Just an absolute thing of beauty that just adds so much to the story, because to me as a viewer, as a fan, for me, I'm now invested in Otani, because he's invested in his ally, his friend, in beating one of his rivals in Jushin Thunder Liger. So now I feel like I want to, like it's a team effort. It's like this collective that wants to beat Liger. And, like, it's not just Kanemoto's feelings that are on the line, it's also Otani's.
Yeah, Kanemoto has a very small, but it really caught my eye. He has a really small exchange with the referee there too, where he just, you know, for the most part, he didn't really acknowledge the referee throughout the entire match. But just after that near fall, he just has a moment where he wanders over and is just asking the question that you know, that was three, no, that was 2. But it's such a cool little moment of just, there's not this Otani is the one selling the absolute disbelief, but just Kanemoto is such a cool character that just any sort of acknowledgement from him, it just gave you the tiniest little element of self-doubt there in that moment of whether he was wondering whether or not he could beat Liger.
So Kanemoto goes for another moonsault, but Liger moves out of the way, and Kanemoto plants himself face first into the mat. I just was laughing so hard when I saw this move happen. Both men come out twice with slaps to the face at the same time. So they're like charging at each other, and they slap each other at the same time. Liger connects with a third one that knocks Kanemoto down. Liger hits the running Liger bomb, but, you know, Kanemoto somehow kicks out at 2. This is just like turning into, like, it feels more like an All Japan, like, 1990s match. Like, it's something, a style that you were saying that you were a big fan of, as well as like the junior heavyweight style of New Japan, but something that I'm a huge fan of as well. It's something that we share is this similar love of the New Japan junior heavyweight style and the All Japan heavyweight style of the 1990s.
And I think that certain characters definitely help bring that out, bring that to life too. And Kanemoto is definitely one of those who he hits hard, but Liger's, like I said before, Liger's sort of this perfect offset to him. That they're wrestling in 2 completely different styles, but there's just this escalation throughout the entire match of of what point do I have to go to win this match? There's this beautiful moment for me right before that exchange you talked about with the consecutive slaps, or the simultaneous slaps, where Liger's just crawling towards Kanemoto. And, again, this might just be me as a huge fan of Liger's, just sort of trying to put too much into this moment, but they're just his body language and the way that he carries himself in these moments. There's a resilience to the way that he's crawling towards him. There's a defiance in the way that he's crawling towards him of just, I've been through so much at this point. And he seems to take a moment to sort of, because Kanemoto misses the moonsault, and then you'll notice he almost pops back up to his feet, and then he notices Liger's down and crawling towards him, and he just kind of grabs his knee and starts selling his knee a bit. And Liger is just taking his time in this moment and just letting this moment really breathe. And I feel like this is giving the crowd one last chance to catch their breath before this final little sprint to the finish.
And we're going to come up to the finish here. There's 2 short-range shotes from Liger to keep Kanemoto in the corner. Liger runs to the opposite corner. He charges back in and just waylays Kanemoto with a running shote. Holy shit. And Davis, what follows after that beautiful running shote?
He takes Kanemoto up to the top rope, lifts him up above his head, and lands a beautiful-looking avalanche brainbuster for the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so that's the finish, an avalanche brainbuster. I don't know too many people who can make an avalanche brainbuster look so dangerous and effective, but I'm sure Liger, being who he is completely protecting Kanemoto in this spot.
This is just 2 masters of what they do, doing what they do, and this finish is indicative of that. Like you said, the avalanche brainbuster definitely to me as a wrestler more dangerous than the fisherman's buster, where you kind of have a greater level of protection there in the way that you connect on it. But the brainbuster to me just a heightened sense of danger there, and expertly delivered by Liger. This felt like a big moment. This felt like a finish, and a fitting finish to an incredible match.
I have to think that, maybe you can speak on this as a wrestler. Like, if you're on the receiving end of just a regular brainbuster, like a straight vertical drop, that you really have to trust the skill of the person performing the move on you. But I can't even imagine, like, the amount of trust that you would have to have in someone to do it from the top rope. And we're not talking like, I don't think it was like a second rope. They were both on the top, and he's just coming straight down. It looks like he's driving the man's head, with the full velocity of both men's weight right into the mat. So, like, what if you were presented this spot from like Liger, like someone like Liger in his prime? Do you have the trust to say, yes, you can do that move? That can be the finish of our match.
I think you do, particularly to someone like a Liger. So, we see in wrestling across the world how often guys are pushing the boundaries these days, and how much trust they're able to put in other people. And I think the standard of wrestling across the world, I think, has definitely grown exponentially over the years. But somebody who is such a renowned professional as Liger, I think you would pretty much trust. I remember, and I always mess this quote up, WH. This very much could have just been a quote made up for a Mark mag that I read as a kid or something of this nature. But I remember reading once that Liger said, for every minute you spend in a match, you should spend an hour training. So that's the kind of guy, if I'm going to get an avalanche brainbuster from someone, that's the guy that I want to get it from. The guy who says that for every minute he spends on a show, he needs to spend an hour in the gym. That's the guy that I want to take it from, for sure.
Well, definitely, even at the age of 55, he looks like he spends an inordinate amount of time in the gym, just in incredible physical shape when Jushin Liger, Thunder Liger, even in the year 2019. So Liger retains his J Crown title in 19 minutes and 26 seconds. And the crowd at the finish of this, they just erupted. They were just so well into it. It felt like, the kind of match they would have seen maybe in the G1 finals, because the G1 finals obviously were mostly held in Sumo Hall. So this match felt like had that kind of epic feel. By the time Liger gets his control segment, he gets his fire back, his heat back from Kanemoto after the first 11 minutes or so in the match. It's just turned on, and it just becomes this grandiose exhibition of sheer technical prowess and viciousness and ferocity, I suppose, like between these two men.
Yeah, you can feel that there's a professional and personal rivalry between the two throughout the match, and just the way that Kanemoto comes out and asserts himself early in the match. And we're not used to seeing Jushin Liger just get his ass handed to him for 11 or 12 minutes, and that's essentially what happens at the start of this match. Is just Kanemoto is just all over him, smothering him. He doesn't have a chance to get a foothold in the match. And once he does, once Kanemoto opens that door with that missed moonsault, Liger is able to immediately make a big impact on Kanemoto, and then they work back to this level where they're almost back at level pegging, and then the brainbuster on the floor, and you feel like the tide is swinging again. Just a beautiful roller coaster of a match, and that the escalation once Liger gets a foothold in this match is really incredible. That last 7 to 8 minutes is just outstanding professional wrestling.
Yeah, and so we'll wrap up the match review here, but before we go, Davis, I want to ask you. So, as of this recording, we just found out what Liger's last ever pro wrestling match will be on January 5th, 2020 at the Tokyo Dome for Night 2 of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom series of shows. And it will be him teaming with his old rival, Naoki Sano, in a tag team match against Ryu Lee, the former Dragon Lee, and Hiromu Takahashi. And I have to ask you, what are your feelings about that being his last ever match? For myself, I was a little disappointed because I was hoping for, and I was kind of expecting some kind of singles match, to be honest.
It was definitely a surprise, and I think part of that is also maybe that for me personally, I don't. It's more the story that I'm coming for. That when Ric Flair retired, there was he's retired many times, but when he retired against Shawn Michaels, there was such a beautiful story to be told, and then when Shawn retired against Undertaker, there's such a beautiful story to be told that I will say it was hard to think of an immediate name that jumped off the page as being the guy who would make the most sense to have a singles match with Liger in his last match. I was actually probably a little disappointed as such a huge fan of Minoru Suzuki. I was probably a little disappointed that feud peaked when it did, and perhaps didn't carry through to the Tokyo Dome, where I felt like they really could have done something really special together. That Suzuki is the perfect bully character to see Liger on his way out. He's the ultimate heel to have to overcome. So I thought that would have been a really beautiful story to tell on his last night as a professional wrestler. But I think it's going to be emotional regardless, just because I don't imagine that the fans are certainly going to be behind Liger 100% on that night. But yeah, I probably feel like a more personal story that we could have attached to would have been nice.
Yeah, and regardless of how I feel about the announcement, I am fortunate enough to going to be in attendance to see his last ever wrestling match, and I'm going to appreciate that fact alone. And I'm lucky enough I'm going to be attending the New Year's Dash show, which is going to feature his retirement ceremony. And I feel lucky to not only have gotten tickets for a New Year's Dash show, but that I'm going to be able to say, and like, hey, I was at his retirement ceremony, so like I'm gonna appreciate that night as well. So like I'm very excited about the the upcoming New Japan shows in the first week of January in 2020. And any plugs for you? I guess on that note, we'll wrap the show up. Any plugs from you, Davis?
Nothing huge. No, we're running a EPW super camp at our training school, the EPW School of Pro Wrestling. That's running from January 6th to January 10th. I'm not sure when the podcast will be out, but that'll be run by myself, Damian Slater, and Gavin McGavin. So we've got quite a few people traveling from around the country to come and train under us for that week, and then we'll be running a showcase at the school on the last evening that the guys and girls are there, so that we'll be able to see them pay their training off in the ring for an exciting match, hopefully. Our next show isn't until early February, our big show proper, which we hold in a venue called the Gate 1 Theatre here in Claremont in Western Australia. But if people want to check me out, just check out Explosive Pro Wrestling. They can check out vimeo.com /Explosive Pro Wrestling, where all of our events go up. And I'm just EPW Davis Storm across the main social platforms.
And are there any things you can hint at in 2020 for EPW?
We're looking at getting some big names out here. So we tested the water. We've never been one to really use internationals in the past. So for the first 17 years of our history, we've not really used internationals for Explosive Pro Wrestling. So we had our good friend TJP out here last year, and that was a fairly successful venture. So there are some big names that we're looking at, including an exciting name from Japan, who I am a huge fan of for many, many, many years, and have stolen many, many techniques from this man's repertoire. So I'm hoping we can get him out there. That's all hush-hush at the moment, but that's hopefully something very exciting to look forward to.
Well, maybe I can get the scoop for just my own. I may not. I'm not going to put any pressure on you. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. But that sounds exciting. Definitely check out Davis on Twitter. Check out Explosive Pro Wrestling out of Perth. It's a very fun promotion. I've gotten to check out some of the shows on Vimeo, and when I had a subscription to High Spots, there's some shows up there as well. Thank you so much, Davis, for joining me again on another show that I've been doing here on Thunderstruck. Of course, you were on Cruel Summer, and you and I had done a review of one of the New Japan shows from California. I forget, I can't remember the name of that show, but it was a very well received review show. I got a lot of positive feedback on it, and maybe on my new secret show that I'm not ready to talk about just yet, in 2020, I will hit you up for do a review with me on that show in the coming year.
Absolutely. I always appreciate talking to you, WH. It's always a fun chat, and appreciate the opportunity to be on the Post Wrestling platform, which I'm a huge fan of and a regular listener myself.
Yeah, so on behalf of Davis, I want to thank all the listeners for tuning into this episode, and I want to thank all listeners for the positive feedback I've been getting on the series so far. We got several more episodes. As of this recording, this will be probably episode number 20, so I think we got like about 5 or 6 more episodes. It's kind of mercurial. There's no, unlike Cruel Summer, there's no set, there's no set number of episodes that we can do, because it's just covering the man's entire career. But keep tuned in for a lot more episodes and some really great guests coming on after Davis's episode. And until the next episode, then, I will say to everyone, goodbye.